Traveling the Vortex.
We've joined Harold Chorley as he searches for a seal in episode number 395. I'm Keith.
I'm Sean.
I'm Glenn.
A seal that's lost its skin. How are you guys?
I got bit by a spider overnight, so I
What?
went to the doctor today. Emergency care clinic.
What kind of doctor? What kind of spider?
I don't know. What kind of doctor? Well, it was an emergency care doctor, general practitioner.
Do you
I
have
don't know.
superpowers?
It happened overnight. It was
Was it
real
radioactive?
small. Actually, it happened Sunday night overnight.
We don't
so-
care. Do you have superpowers?
Yeah.
Can you climb walls?
Anyway, so how was your guys this week?
What about the superpowers?
No superpower.
Oh,
What a lame story.
I've been really thirsty. Is that a superpower? I've been drinking water like crazy. Is that a sign? What do you got?
I don't know. I just had hot flashes and like dizzy spells.
Oh.
But as far as I can tell, I'm not running a temperature or.
Did you go to the doctor?
Yes, but for something completely related. I didn't get this until after I came back from the doctor. I think they infected me. I'm wearing a bit thin. I'm waiting for the regeneration to kick in.
I watched Rob Roy, the Highland Rogue this week. It's an old Disney movie from the 1950s, and I'm following along with another podcast who's reviewing all of the Disney films all the way back from Snow White and the Seventh Dwarf Song, and this was this week's, and I liked it. It was really good.
I started
Highly
listening
recommend
to a new podcast.
What'd you start listening to?
Everything is Alive.
Oh, okay. What is that?
It is an interview show with inanimate objects. So the first episode is with Doug, a can of cola. He's a store brand cola. He's describes himself as
So they're gender specific?
they're gender specific.
Okay.
And he describes himself as safely bottom shelf because that's often where you'll find him. It's a really
This
funny.
sounds weird.
It's really, really funny. It's quite enjoyable.
Did you guys watch anything?
I watched Christopher Robin.
Christopher Robin.
Oh, how was it?
It was really good.
I want to see that.
So do I.
It's not as much fun kid adventure movie as say Paddington or one of those, but for us old guys, the nostalgia just comes out and beats you over the head with it. It's just a very sweet little story. I knocked out 2 more episodes of Toys That Made Us. Speaking of,
Did you finish up then?
I watched the Transformers and the Lego. I haven't finished Hello Kitty yet.
Okay. Yeah, the Lego one was pretty good.
Yeah.
Especially coming back to the one guy saying, what was the
system?
Yeah, the system. They do those so well. I'm looking forward to another season.
Yeah.
Anything else? Cool. Let's move on to news.
We have a lot of news, and we're going to start with some sad news. Michael Pickwoad has passed away, and he is the man who, behind the look of the show for the last 7 years, he designed Peter Capaldi's TARDIS interior.
He designed
Matt
Matt Smith's.
The initial Matt Smith, too?
No, not the... I don't think it was the first one. It was the second one, the dual column.
Yeah, the one that became Peter's.
Yeah. Yes.
The split level.
The one that's
split
more
level.
Peter.
He was the first one
The
that
one
came
that's
up with
more
the split
Peter
level.
than Matt.
Well, yeah, I suppose. I mean, he's been with it since the Snowman.
Right,
So,
yeah.
but I think that was his first. So
Sad news.
I had no idea who this guy was. And I saw everybody posting about it, condolences to the family and everything. And I was, what in the world? And I looked it up, didn't realize how much of an impact he had on the design of the show.
So one of the first films he worked on was With Nail and I.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't read that.
Well, because we watched it. It was a movie.
And he was the son of an actor who was in the War Games.
Oh.
So
Lots of Doctor Who
Doctor Who
connections there.
connections.
Yeah.
Deep Doctor Who connections.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, thoughts, prayers, and meditations out to his family.
So the first episode he oversaw the production was Christmas Carol. But so he did get the chance to design an interior. Let's move on to some happy news where they have announced the writers and directors for Series 11.
Do I know any of them?
I don't know, do you?
Well, who are they?
Here are the writers. Mallory Blackman, Ed Heim,
You don't have to pause for effect. You can just read through them.
I have to scroll down to get to the next.
It's not in a list.
There's bios of each one.
Okay.
Vinny Patel, Pete McTine, and Joy Wilkinson.
I thought maybe you were pausing for my reaction for each one.
No. I'm scrolling.
Because right now it's nope.
Her episode of Broadchurch was fantastic. I don't know why you don't know who these people are.
So these are obviously all new people to write for the show.
That's pretty good.
And just as a reminder that doesn't seem like enough people to write a whole season of a TV show, but they have shipped it to the writer's room as opposed to individual episodes by individual writers.
Well, and considering the
is that official?
The fact that there's no...
That's something Chibnall said. Chibnall.
Oh, so I thought when this list came out, I was like, oh, so they're not doing the writer's room thing. Because I'd never seen that it was confirmed that they were...
I thought I read that it was confirmed. That Chibnall said that, this is where we're going with it, and that's why it's only 5 people.
In the statement, it says, we have a team of writers who've been working quietly and secretly for a long time now.
Well, and that's what usually writers' room do is they will all sit down and collaborate, write a story, and then one person from the group, and they will rotate as the head writer.
So do we assume that Chibnall writes at least 2 episodes in the season, even though he's not listed?
Could be, or do these guys have more than one credit to them?
They don't say how many they're writing.
Are any of these guys brought over from Broadchurch? Out of curiosity?
Not that I see.
Oh.
I could be wrong, but I'm just skimming through the bios that are provided. I don't see anything about Broadchurch.
Huh. Well, what about the directors? Do you have that list?
I do. Let me
they have
scroll
bios
back down
too.
To them. They do have bios.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to butcher some of these names.
Just throw them out there.
Say
them like you know.
Sally Appahamian.
No, don't go back.
I missed the letter.
Commit.
I missed the letter.
Commit.
Jamie Childs.
Well, that was easy.
Jennifer Perot.
Sure.
Mark Tonderai. Tonderai.
Nope. You did it again.
You're
Tonderai.
Commit.
That's it.
Oh, 4?
4.
Oh. So do we assume maybe Chibnall directed... no, I'm just kidding.
No, Rachel Talalay.
I don't recognize any of those names.
So
did any of those come over from church? Church.
No.
Did anybody else comes over church? Broadchurch.
No, not that I'm aware of. But Jamie Childs wrote directed the announcement of the
Jodie Whittaker.
That I almost said Christopher
thing
Robin.
where she comes and takes off.
Yeah, he directed that.
Well,
he or she.
I love his work.
And I don't see anything about Broadchurch again. So they
all
talk about how much they love.
That's church.
They talk about how much they love?
How much they love Doctor Who.
Oh, okay. They talk about how much they love.
Well, they just love things in general.
They just love things.
The Mark guy has directed... like that. Lucifer.
Fear of commitment.
Yep.
That's what we call it.
Episodes of Lucifer, Gotham, Black
Lupus?
Knight. Lucifer. Ooh, I can't talk tonight.
Are you sure you haven't had an illness this week as well? Were you bitten by a radioactive spider?
Lucifer, Gotham, Black Lightning, and the Jennifer Lawrence thriller House at the End of the Street.
Oh, this is one of the directors?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool.
The Mark guy.
Well, he's good. You expect me to remember those names? You couldn't pronounce the names, let alone me remember them.
I've been following Mark for years.
The Mark guy.
The Mark guy.
That's his Twitter handle.
It should be now. So, and the other exciting thing is the amount of diversity in the casting. Not only men, but women and of minorities.
Oh, good.
In fact, Mallory Blackman is I believe the very first minority woman writer for the show.
Long time coming.
Yeah. Exciting stuff.
Yep. What else we got in the news?
Well, on the heels of apparently the huge success of Tom Baker's first season on Blu-ray, we are getting Peter Davison's first season on Blu-ray.
So tell me about that. Was it huge?
I don't know.
He
That's
just
what-
commit. It's just going to commit to it.
That's
Keith
why I
owns
say
it.
presumably successful.
Oh,
Presumably successful.
Because they're doing another.
If it wasn't
Blu-ray box
successful,
set.
if Tom Baker's first season wasn't successful, nobody at BBC Worldwide went, well,
Maybe
let's
Peter
try it
will.
with Peter. No offense, Peter.
I have a
but
feeling Peter was in the pipeline as soon as this is coming out after the Tom Baker
Yeah,
one,
I think so too.
Let's just hope all of them are successful and we just continue to get
Yeah.
series of these.
So, do you guys wonder if it's just going to be a series of first seasons initially?
Yeah, quite possibly.
it kind of makes
They
sense.
can definitely do that for 4, 5, 6,
They can almost
7,
do it for one.
8. They can
9.
almost do it for 1. They can definitely do it for 3 because all of his have been restored.
In fact, one is actually native film, so it's already been on Blu-ray.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, I have that on Blu-ray. That's the only classic one I had on Blu-ray before Tom Ray.
Tom Ray.
Tom Baker.
I'm glad I'm not the only one struggling
Wow,
here.
yeah.
Did you guys watch the?
You have a gas leak in the house?
Do you have numb tongue?
It's late. It's what the. It's what it is. Did you guys watch the video? Did Juvenka Airlines?
Oh,
Yes, that was fun. That was
Very
cleverly
nicely done. So, of course, the first season, along with a whole bunch of bonus features, including more of the behind the sofa, which looks like it has all of them on the couch together. All of the main cast from the first season, which I think is going to be fantastic to watch.
With that
That'll
group.
be fun, yeah.
I love the fact that, including Time Flight, which may be behind you. Like for as many clips as they pulled from Time Flight for that trailer, but we're still going to dog on it.
Yeah.
So they only have to release 3 Blu-rays for Davison because he only had 3 seasons, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Potentially 4 if they decide what they're going to do with the 5 Doctors, because it was released as a special and technically isn't part of
Well,
one of the
that's
seasons.
right. Yeah.
I would just include
I
it
bet
as a
they.
sequence.
I bet they added on there. Yeah.
Lump it in,
Yeah.
one or the other. Whatever one they kind of need the 5 Doctors added
Yeah, I was
to.
actually,
For
I was
sales.
very excited for Tom Baker on Blu-ray, and I'm with you. I presume that must have done well enough that this was,
Well,
a given. But
I would imagine that pre-sales probably gave them the inkling that, this might succeed then.
although, like I say, it could have been in the pipeline, but just to turn it so quickly, that's
Well, and there are some...
that's coming out in October or November. I can't remember.
That
what
is
they
coming out in November in the UK. No US release date yet.
Yeah, but they did the Tom Baker very near it, so
Yeah.
hopefully that'll continue.
Hopefully it won't be long.
I'm a little bummed still at the packaging. The packaging on the UK releases is gorgeous and very cool and
Well, I think
boxy and
Oh.
fold out. And we get, here's a plastic Blu-ray
At least
case.
the art's going to be the
You can
same.
order yours from the UK, and they're region free.
Yeah, but
And we don't get this nice book.
yeah.
There is a nice book in the UK version.
Yeah. I could care less about packaging. You know me.
Who has 2 thumbs and isn't you? I like my packaging.
What else we got? I'm rushing you through this.
Other
So we got
news?
so much stuff.
Yeah. The Big Finish is continuing to celebrate their 20th anniversary of Doctor Who on audio
This is exciting.
with a new series of stories called The Legacy of Time. It's billed as the biggest audio crossover event ever. It's going to be 6 hour-long stories, and it's going to see characters from the entire history of the show crossing paths, some for the very first time. So it's classic and new series colliding.
So 6 hour long.
But I gotta ask, it does say the new and the classic series, but does that also include like maybe some stuff from Big Finish? I mean, because we've got Airman, we've got obviously Evelyn Smythe won't be able to.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, but we've got some of these characters, Hex, those people that have been created specifically for
So
Big Finish.
one
Benny.
of the big ones they're touting is Professor River Strong is meeting Professor Bernie Summerfield.
Yay!
Story.
Oh.
So it'll be some Big Finish
Yes.
characters as well. That'll be
Kate
neat.
Stewart travels back in time to Classic Unit and meets the Third Doctor, which is going to be voiced by Tim Turlor,
Ah.
and of course Joe Grant, who she knows in her present time, so she gets to meet a younger version of her. So there is also, since 2019 is also the 30th anniversary of Remembrance of the Daleks, the countermeasure team will be reunited with the 7th Doctor and Ace, and the 6th Doctor and Charlie will once again meet Detective Inspector Patricia Menzies in a police procedural like no other, they say. Plus there's a visit to Gallifrey and elsewhere in the Time War. The Doctors will meet and there will be Easter eggs aplenty. So they are keeping some of the goodies under wraps.
Very cool.
It's a very, very smart move to do it in this manner, but I'm not going to lie, I'm a little upset that it's not one 6-hour story that just has everybody together.
Who knows? They might, intertwine.
Yeah, but not at the same time.
You never know. Time is collapsing. Incidents of temporal chaos and devastation are appearing throughout many of the lives of the Doctor and his friends fall out from one terrible disaster. The Doctor must save history itself, and he will need all the help he can get.
Dun, dun, dun.
That's the box set synopsis.
Very cool.
And of course, there's a whole lot of more details online if you want to go read it.
That's exciting stuff. All right, what's next?
What's next
I like
is
this next one, by the way.
Spoilers, Glenn.
I've already seen it.
December will see the release of Doctor Who Audio Annual, a collection of vintage stories from Terry Nation's Terry Nation's Dalek annuals of the 70s, read by stars of Doctor Who.
Cool.
Read by Nicholas Briggs, Louise Jameson, and Matthew Waterhouse.
It's funny. You must have just stumbled across this recently.
I did.
Because they have already released some of the Doctor Who audio annuals in the UK where they do the same thing. And they're actually audio versions of some of the stories that were in the annuals in the 1960s.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's the Doctor Who audio annual 1, I think 2. There's also a second Doctor one.
Great, more things to put on the schedule.
Yeah, and I saw this actually a few months back, and I thought, oh, I should bring that up. There's also a specific one that was released for the Invasion from Space, which was a first Doctor audio story. So it's something they've been doing, but this is the first time that they've actually delved into the Dalek annuals to do something specific for that.
So is Sarah Kingdom in this?
No.
So no secret space.
Not
What was-
that
what was
this
the,
describes.
The SS.
SSS?
Space Security
Space Security Service.
Yeah.
No Space Force.
No Space Force. That I'm aware of. I put that caveat in there.
I'm excited for that. I've
Gotta
been
commit
wanting
to it, Keith.
I've been wanting to get the
No.
Doctor Who annuals that have been released and get Sean to get those on the schedule.
And our last bit of news isn't necessarily Doctor Who news.
It is,
But
because the
it's
Doctor's gonna be in Star Wars.
Doctor
Spoilers.
Who tangent. Tangent?
You want a spoiler? Hey, I'm gonna completely blow everybody out of the water with this. Are you ready for this? Okay, so Matt Smith has been cast in episode 9, right?
Yes.
That's the spoiler.
He's
We already knew
English, therefore he will be an Imperial. Oh, we're so surprised! Come on, guys, really? He's going to be a member of the First Order. I don't know what everybody's hoping for.
He's going to be Skynet.
Maybe not.
They're going to cross over with Terminator.
that. Ray's British. Does that mean she's a bad guy?
Oh.
No, because they have her doing the American accent.
No, they don't.
No, they don't.
No, she's got a British accent, which is why I always
And
thought
Kylo has an
which
American
is what
accent.
I've always
I know,
thought
it's all weird.
was weird because Kylo is you're right, but he is American.
And
correct.
Boyega's doing an
Boyega
American.
is
Boyega's
doing an
doing
American
American
accent.
accent.
He is British, so which I thought was weird that they went that route. But if you're gonna
Did you hear
let
his justification? There's a clip somewhere where he's describing why he decided to go with an American accent when he auditioned, is because he thought he was being a good guy, not realizing he was
So
a
exactly,
stormtrooper,
yeah.
and he should have
Yeah.
had a British accent.
Well, Sean says that with, tongue firmly planted in cheek, but that's kind of how they did it back in
Oh,
the
yeah.
70s with the first series, is if you were British, you were the bad guys. And
Yep.
if you were American, you were the good guys.
Except for Alec Guinness.
Except for Alec Guinness.
Yes.
And James Earl Jones. Although he does sort of a British accent.
That just comes from hanging out with everybody. I imagine you'd have to
You just start picking it up.
you'd have to
by
lapse
accident.
into it at some point. And then one of your really good friends is there going, don't do that.
Stop that. Stop that.
What is he doing? He sounds as bad as Dick Van Dyke. All right, should we move on to
No,
feedback?
that's Dick Van Dyke's real accent.
Should we move on to feedback?
No. Because there is no feedback.
Way to commit. I'm proud of you on that one.
If people wanted to send us feedback, what would they do?
They would go to our website, travelingthevortex.com, and fill out the Send Us Feedback tab. Or you can send it directly to feedback@travelingthevortex.com.
Sean, if they wanted to give us money, what do they do?
They can go to our website and click on the Patreon link, or they can go to patreon.com and look up Traveling the Vortex, because we are listed there, and we will happily, I say, accept their kind donation to keep this podcast on the air.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. All right, well, let's move on to our review. What were we reviewing this week? It's been so long now, I forgot.
The Lost Skin.
Oh, yeah, finally.
Brigadier Lethbridge-Stewart is on leave in New York, but in Scotland, the word reaches the 5th Operational Corps that Harold Chorley, journalist and pain in Lethbridge-Stewart's rear, has gotten wind of the Corps' presence in Stirling. A plan is set in motion to take Chorley on a wild goose chase to John O'Groats, as far from the Corps as possible. RSM Samson Ware and Professor Travers travel to the edge of Scotland, leaving a trail of breadcrumbs, which are picked up by Chorley and his old chum Larry Green. But soon it becomes clear that there is a real mystery in John O'Groats, a strange link between Mahari Dockery, a woman from Hoona, and the Orkney Islands, and the local legend of the Selkie. To protect Mahari, Samson needs to sideline Chorley and Green, but the ever-erratic Professor Travers has other plans. What is drawing Mahari to the Orkney Islands? What hold does Chorley have over Green? And more importantly, what links Chorley and Green to the secret history of Mahari?
Bum, bum, bum.
I feel like the answer to that last one is nothing.
I really, 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 really like this. I really, really, really like the conclusion. I've made no secret of the fact that I liked the first two installments when they came out is stories in the Havoc Files books. And the resolution of this, to me, does not disappoint. I'm very glad that Andy decided to kind of rework the story, although there's not a lot different, but there's some differences.
It's just more of a reorganization.
It
of the
really
story.
is, because some of the revelations we get between Harold and Larry are pushed kind of towards the end of the book.
More towards the climax.
Yeah. And actually almost more organically works there as well, especially the situation that they end up getting into. I did like the bait and switch. I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but the bait and switch of
Should we sound the spoiler horn?
when we last ended in the Havoc Files, Charlie had been knocked out,
Sucker punched,
and we assumed, I think, that it was Mari's husband, Mr. Doherty, but come to find out it was Samson that had punched him, and it really was just kind of a misunderstanding.
which he thought it was the husband.
That was a shock, and I really kind of liked that because it was something that I didn't expect to come. Although, to be fair, we did get a page sent to us, preview to us, explaining why that it was Samson, but didn't tell us why it was Samson.
Yeah.
So that was nice to find out the resolution for that. To find out what exactly had happened to Bishop, because at the end of the the second part in books, we didn't know. Well, obviously we knew Bishop was going to survive because it goes on in books later.
I was still concerned.
We didn't know what had happened to him, or what I really was surprised to find out is and you guys remind me if this has been addressed later in the books. But Tim, we don't know what happened to Tim.
We still don't
He
know.
got taken back to presumably the vault, and
Right.
something happened to him, and we don't know what that is. So I kind of liked that being left out there too. If they choose to address that later, I felt really bad for Tim, and I felt equally bad for Anne, who kind of wrapped him into this whole thing to get the information or try to get the information about what they did.
And the fact that she barely got any information anyways.
Yeah,
And that it was all
it
was all for naught.
Yeah, and of course now knowing what happens to Professor Travers, and that's all kind of divulged, later as to why Gore needed him, and why they were ultimately doing the experiments. They kind of put it under the guise of trying to control the Yeti through the sentient information from the great intelligence that was left in him, but we find out obviously later that he was going to be used as a portal. So
Yeah.
that was nice little retroactive storytelling there.
It was kind of a hard gear shift for me getting into we know nothing about Gore mindset.
Yeah, exactly.
It was kind of odd to show up and, oh yeah, and then the nice little hints of who he's supposed to be before you know who he actually is.
Well, I think another slam into reverse was that, and obviously we had read. I think he was still alive at this point when we were reading the first two episodes of this in the Hammock Files. But to have Professor Travers back again, even though we've read things with him since, but they've always been kind of it's the retroactive one that got pulled back through time and traveled with H.G. Wells. But to have him back in this world at this time was a bit, oh wow, yeah, I forgot about Professor Travers and his ultimate demise that's coming
and his recognition that what's going on with him is not actually dementia, that it's the intelligence.
Part of it is, he does acknowledge it. Part of it is age, but most of it is from the intelligence,
which was a really nice thing for them to tackle.
And I like the fact that him and Mari got had that moment on the boat when they were going over to the island to find the lost skin. They had that moment where he kind of helps her recognize that she's not crazy of this pool, that she's obviously has this block in her life of memory loss and not knowing where she's from or anything, and for her to be able to turn around and give him someone to talk to and confide in too. I thought that was a neat little moment between the two, when he finally divulges that he understands that pieces are missing and it's as a result of the intelligence. I thought that was pretty neat. I'm kind of taking up all the conversation here, so just jump in whenever you guys want.
Check.
I just loved all of it. I will say, and I pointed this out in my Goodreads. The only thing that I felt I didn't even dislike it is just I thought that it felt a little too rushed to the finish line, and I think maybe by putting the both backstories in the same chapter. Maybe weighted it a little too much. That I hate to use the word the info dump at the end, because it wasn't really at the end, but
it felt like an info dump.
To have the Mari backstory kind of dumped on us and the Larry and Harry backstory dumped on us. Again, I'm glad that Andy shifted that to later in the book, especially because when they're confronted by Doherty, they get you really get that emotional punch for Harold and the reason why Larry and him have that relationship that they have. And you really kind of, the first time I read this, I really felt that Larry was the one that attacked the dad and that Harold was hiding his secret all these years. And that's what he was holding over his head.
To make sure I read it right this time even.
Yeah. And to come back and find out that it was Harry that did it and blames Larry for it, I thought was an interesting kind of change or turnaround for me in my mindset of how I expected things were going to play out. So I liked it. I felt like those two at the end felt like kind of a quick rush to the finish line. And again, that's the only it's not even a detriment to the story because it's still really good. It's just I felt that was a little heavy-handed there towards the end, but I can't say any other bad things about it because I really, really enjoyed it.
It was really good. It was really well done, and I just went ahead and started over. I just went ahead and read the whole thing
Oh, yeah.
instead of
I
trying to
did.
figure out where
Well,
I left off.
that's
because-
just it. I read the whole thing because knowing it had been restructured a bit, and then it drops in some new stuff that
It does.
wasn't in the original series, in the original.
And one
episode.
of the things that I think this really benefits from being released now, I mean, it's retrospective, but there were a lot of just little tie-ins, even though the adventure itself is set during all the way back. You have to go back to Times Squared.
Yeah, because Lethbridge-Stewart and Sally are still together and over in the U.S.
Yeah, but there's a lot of stuff that we have come to find out since then that is still kind of sprinkled in to this one. And some of it is just name drops, like when Gore is talking to Anne, and he makes the offhand comment of, "Oh, remind me to check on Simon and see how he's doing."
Yeah,
And I was like, "Oh yeah, that was because that's going on right now."
right.
Or just a bunch of little things. The Travers stuff with the Great Intelligence, which I can't help but think I was involved with that one a little bit, taking credit for it even if I wasn't. So there's just peppered with those kind of things. But what really struck me is between parts 1 and 2, I really still didn't feel that this was Chorley's story.
Until this time.
He's in it.
Yeah.
But the main thrust is the Selkie and it's kind of like, hey, we've got the entire fifth except for Lethbridge-Stewart and Evans. They're like the only character, and Sally. They're the only ones that aren't showing up in this story so far. Everybody else has to.
I mean,
go
even Bartlett gets a mention.
yeah.
Of course, he had the first time,
Before that happened.
before his untimely death.
Well, I don't know about untimely.
Hey,
Before his death.
So, going and having this one restructured, and then all of a sudden getting this, and it for me, it did turn when we get to that moment, and McGregor has the shotgun, and
McGregor,
or the guy,
The husband.
the husband, Doherty.
Yeah. McGregor. So where'd he come from?
The bad guy.
Ewan.
He's got the gun, and then it goes off. Well, it doesn't go off. He shoots him.
He shoots him, yeah.
Just blam. And all of a sudden, that moment not only brought the weight of the situation crashing down on me, but it really brought the focus of the story into very sharp relief that, this is not the story I thought I was, I thought we were getting a pretty quote-unquote run-of-the-mill monster of the week kind of,
Right.
Yeah.
even though I was enjoying it. I don't want to say run-of-the-mill, but you know what I mean. Just that it's just another paranormal adventure, and we're going to get this told. But no, it's Chorley's story. Top to bottom, it's Chorley's story. I just didn't see it until now. And it really hit me. I was very emotional, actually, at the end of this book. And kind of surprised that Larry's gone. I never ever thought that we haven't heard of Green in the more recent books. I just assumed he was out there, and we'll get back to him at some point.
Kind of like Charlie.
Kind of like but no, this is the reason we don't hear from him anymore.
Well, there's a passing reference in something, and I want to say it was the Dreamer's Lament that didn't confirm that he was dead or still alive. I think, if I'm remembering right. Maybe it was another book, or maybe I'm even thinking post or pre this. But there was a passing reference to him. I must have been Dreamer's Lament, because Chorley was in that one as well, because he's the one that goes through with Lethbridge-Stewart to the initially, and that was the one time that keyed into me that Larry hasn't been around. We haven't done anything with him. So I was like you, when I read this, I went, okay, this makes sense why we haven't heard from Larry since, whatever the last full story he would have been in was, can't even remember now. Let's see, he wasn't in Dominators. He was in he had the talk show on, what was the one, the
Showstoppers.
The Showstoppers. He still had the talk show for that. Although that ends up being a Chorley story as well, but I think it's referenced that Larry's interviewing somebody.
Yeah.
Well, isn't Larry interviewing somebody in the Dominators too? The Dominators.
He was first in.
he was
It's really sure domination.
No, Larry. No, Larry goes all the way back to Schizoid Earth. That was
Schizoid
because
Earth.
I think they were going to use Harold in Schizoid Earth, and I think it had something to do with they weren't sure where they were going with the
Right,
character,
yeah.
or they weren't sure
Yeah.
if they had the complete rights to him. Although that would have been from Heisman Estate anyway. But anyway, there was some reason why they changed Harold, because I think who was that wrote that? McEntee? David McEntee?
McEntee.
Okay, so
yeah.
I think originally he wanted to use Harold Charlie, and I think they ended up having to change in with Larry Green. That's how Larry Green was invented. So that was his first book. So regardless, there was something that made me wonder, why haven't we seen Larry Green? And for this to come through, as you said, and go, oh, well, there you go. That's why.
And it makes sense from when you look at the through line of the Lethbridge-Stewart series. We've got a lot of reporters running around. Because we've got Chorley, and we've got Larry, and we've got Charlie now coming up. Yeah. It's kind of like,
although
we realistically don't need all these guys. So it
another
makes
thing,
sense to kind of tidy that up.
Well, that's another thing that I liked about this story is the fact that even though Charlie's a journalist, they've kind of narrowed his scope into a friend of Anne's and doing the memoirs for Professor Travers, even though it seems to be something just to keep him occupied. Not Charlie, but Professor Travers occupied. They kind of narrow that down to this may be his kind of thing, is he's more of a documentarian or instead of So it kind of cleaned up that area of too many reporters. I would agree.
The other thing that I was really struck by when we got to the end of this is a very wonderful flip where there are all these hidden brothers that run throughout this. That we've got Lethbridge-Stewart and Gore, who are kind of in that weird, pseudo-related stage.
Well, never mind the fact that it starts with the forgotten son.
We've got James, who is there. Then in order to fix or incorporate Twice Upon a Time, we've got Uncle Archie, who isn't the uncle,
right?
and that kind of thing. So there's another level to it at that point. And then we've got Chorley and Larry kind of having this very similar parallel thing. And I think it's very cool that in Chorley's mind, he's Lethbridge-Stewart's nemesis. He is, or Lethbridge-Stewart is his, however you want to look at it. Sure. He's the arch enemy. He's the guy that I've got to get. He's matched.
Well, they're obviously adversaries. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
And Lethbridge-Stewart he's to him, Chorley is a nuisance.
Right.
He's a mild annoyance, which is why I was really kind of surprised, even with you, Keith, reading that description. We're going to go find the Selkie. That's the adventure we're going on. Oh, and Chorley's here. Well, we're going to misdirect him. We're going to leave him a trail of breadcrumbs to get him off the track. But we're going to go find the Selkie. Only to find out, no, it's Chorley's story. And so I like that Chorley is so obsessed with Lethbridge-Stewart and thinking he's the bad guy. He's the guy I got to get. He's the guy I got to outsmart. He's the guy I got to, I really got to get him. Only to find out that they are actually much more similar than you'd really. Yeah. I mean, they're almost. I don't want to say two different sides of the same coin, but in a way they are, because Lethbridge-Stewart is honorable and upright and forthwith and brave and heroic, and Chorley is not any of those things. But yet, in a way, they are cut from the same cloth, and just the circumstances have made them almost polar opposites. And I thought that was a very clever paralleling of these characters and this thread that has kind of run through this whole. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but
I think it's a good observation. Yeah. I didn't really kind of plumb onto that, but that's a good observation. I never thought of that. I think one of the things that jumped out at me was this tragedy that's become Harold Chorley because of his connection or because of his involvement in the London event in The Web of Fear. I think it's interesting that Larry is the one that got him the gig, that Larry would have been the one that had gone into the underground, but Larry, thinking that he was doing something good for Harold, is the one that suggests him for the story, and Harold ends up going, and that ultimately sets off the demise of Harold Chorley. And Larry Green is indirectly responsible for that when he was only trying to help him. advance his career and
Yeah.
do better. And it just, I thought that was an interesting dynamic there that Larry really is responsible for, indirectly responsible, because he thought he was doing a good thing. It's not like he did it out of malice or anything, but responsible for Harold's decline, which I thought was interesting, Chorley's decline. But so that was a unique revelation for me, that I was like, oh wow, this guy who's continually trying to reconnect with his brother, to patterns himself after him in order to try to get close to him, and then indirectly is the reason why Chorley ends up the way he is, or what the chain of events that lead to where we're at this point with Chorley.
Yeah.
It's very tragic. And I liked how we got a glimmer of hope with the family at the end. Mm-hmm. And, kind of gave Chorley a happy Christmas, which, again, ties back into the Christmas story where we've touched on every character.
Except for Harold Chorley.
Mm-hmm. So now we get that resolution.
It's funny though. I think at one time, and maybe this might be serendipitous, or this might be maybe influential, but I think we mentioned how we really liked that story and how it had everybody involved, except for we kind of wanted Chorley there because he feels like part of the family, and it's almost like that was kind of okay. Let's. This was Chorley's version. This is what happened to Chorley that Christmas.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that. And now, I have to remember, because we up to this point where this story is set, we've had Chorley in, obviously, Web of Fear. We've had him in Dominators.
Yeah, Mutually Assured
Domination. And we've had him in Showstoppers.
Yes, and we had him in Dreamer's Lament.
And then Dreamer's Lament would be after.
Post this, yeah.
So that's the only one, really,
and the funny thing is, we noticed a marked change in Chorley, which I don't...
He was in the Schizoid Earth.
Oh, that's right. He was in Schizoid.
He was in Schizoid?
He just had a different role.
Oh, that's right, yeah. Yeah, you're right. He was. But, he's not actually in it.
Showstoppers,
it's mentioned.
And then...
He's mentioned.
That could be.
He's mentioned.
And then Grandfather Infestation.
Yeah, he was investigating the pods. Yeah.
But in all the early ones, Chorley is Chorley.
Yeah.
He's still slightly wacky, demented, and blames Lethbridge-Stewart for it, all the way up through Grandfather Infestation. But when he comes back in Dreamer's Lament, he is different. He's a slightly different version of Harold Chorley. He doesn't seem like he's as on the edge, and I love that this explains why.
Yeah,
that it's just that little coda at the end, that by dealing with Larry and reconnecting with his family, that maybe that started the healing process, and that he's not the lonely drunk hanging out in his flat.
Well, and he in Lethbridge-Stewart, I mean, almost because they have to, but they end up being tolerable now at this point, and it is Lethbridge-Stewart that reaches out to him in order to, after Charlie's been trailing him or trying to get some information from him, he does reach out to him to help him with this, somewhat indirectly help him with the situation that they've got going on at the Triangle. But I agree. There's a marked change in Chorley that until now really wasn't explained. We say marked change. I mean, he's still got very much the characteristic of Chorley, but he has a different air to him, and I think that this kind of fills in that gap of why. So that was pretty cool.
I also like the Selkie storyline of
that
alien mystery, and Trevor's insistence that it's an alien the entire time, and then the fact that he's actually right, and then the turn of
yes and no. They leave it ambiguous enough that that's what you assume is the case, but isn't necessarily. It's not outwardly said they were aliens, that because they'd been there for so long that it's. But yes, you're certainly right. It does validate him somewhat.
Well, and then the fact that she gets to decide what she wants after everything's said
Yeah, I
and
thought
done.
that was interesting that we went down that road, because I thought it's interesting. She had that pull to find this, look at which I completely thought they were really going to find some skin somewhere that she was going to have to put back on, and I thought this is kind of
gonna be weird.
interesting. We'll see where this goes, and for it to be a definite setup so that she would be called back to there, because they've been searching for her for so long. I thought that was a neat ruse too. Of wow, this went a completely different direction than I thought it would.
Almost anticlimactic, not necessarily in a bad way, but that it takes Travers and Samson and Charlie and they all have to come and convince her. Well, you felt the pull. Let's go to the island and look. All you got to do is get on a boat. It's over there. Okay, so we get on the boat and go over there, and there is no grand unearthing of the tomb, and it kind of felt like that's where we were going with it, that we had to find the skin. And it turns out, no, it's a beacon, and we put it here, and we've just been waiting for 16 years for you to show up.
Yeah.
It was over there, lady.
Just across the sea.
You could see it from here. It was over there. So I get, in that regard, it's kind of like, huh. But that, again, that's my one little niggling complaint, that it's still satisfied.
Had it been some earth-threatening thing, that would have...
Yeah, that would have been too much. I didn't want that.
So the fact that it was such a small... It would have, united these two people, these two species of people, or however they described it. And then the fact that they were united anyways without this marriage, it's just subdued of a, not plot, but, of stakes enough that the reveal fits in with that.
Yeah. And I love the fact that Travers is so frequently portrayed as kind of the doddering professor, that he wears the thread-borne suit and everything. But it's not until you kind of put his credentials out there that you realize, oh yeah, he did discover Yeti. He did prove aliens. He did, he's got a proven track record of being right. And then he goes into this and was right.
Yeah.
And it's like, he really, he knows his stuff. We just kind of think of him as the doddering old fool. And so
and he's seen, the first hand in the Flaming Soldier, he was the one that came in as the expert on the ship that was in there. So,
yeah.
And I like the fact that this kind of put that official capstone on, on his career. And then, as you said, he can put diplomat on there too, because they're like, oh, well, no, we have to have the marriage, because otherwise we'll go back to being war. Balderdash or whatever it was.
And I never thought of Travers as overly progressive of a character, but for that time period, this would have, and for him, this would have been a very progressive thinking.
Yeah. And it's funny how much of that doesn't really come back in his home life.
Right.
Travers is very progressive out in the world, dealing with science, dealing with facts, dealing with this. But his home life, the pages of it that we get all seem to be the wife should stay at home with the family. And
see, I think
he comes across that way.
I disagree, because I think that there is an inherent part of him that maybe because of the era and his age, maybe sort of has that deep inside and feels that way. On the other hand, he's very respectful of Anne, who's doing something that not a lot of women were doing at that time as well, and very supportive of her.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
I think he has a progressive attitude in that sense as well, because he's very supportive of her. I think where he has more of that old-fashioned attitude is in the people's portrayal of him, on how he should act and how. And I think he has kind of an old-time attitude as far as that goes, and I think that comes across. But I think as far as I think we have the evidence of Anne and her success, and his encouragement of it is something that has shown me all along that he has a bit of a progressive side to him anyway.
But how much of that is because he feels guilty that he wasn't there and he was off globetrotting? And
well, it certainly could be some of it. But
so now he's trying to make amends for it.
At least it's never been telegraphed that way.
Yeah.
So.
I don't know. It's just an impression that I get of him, but I enjoyed him in this immensely.
I think one of the characters that had a surprising change for me from the first time I read the first two parts to now is Catriona. I got the impression reading these the first time that Catriona was going to be that one that was she first of all believed Mari that maybe bought into the Selkie story a little more than the locals did or than anybody else would have. And she seemed very intent on making sure that she was protecting Mari from Mr. Doherty. But I was quite surprised when she becomes the dissenting voice of letting her go across, even though I think she expresses to Charlie that she needs to get away from Doherty because he's abusive. So she recognizes that she's a good friend in that way. But I thought just something to me thought she would be very much for her going out and seeking this destiny or this pull that she had, and for her to turn around and say, "No, this is foolish." I thought that was an interesting twist for me, and I liked that. I thought that was cool because it made me realize that I established something in a character that wasn't necessarily in that character, and I like when authors are able to do that to me.
Nor did she wind up being the, I'm actually the one that told everybody that.
Yes. Which
is the other way.
That was the interesting. Well, the other interesting thing is the fact that the gal at the inn is the one that's been planting this seed, because she recognized Mari at one point and felt that that's probably who this was, and so she's been kind of perpetrating this rumor so that it would get back to Mari in some way, that she would eventually go there. And she, in fact, I fully believe now that she knew that because Samson was looking for her, I think she confided more in Samson than she did just the local legend. She kind of went a little further. I think that was her way of saying, I think maybe now I have found somebody that can help her. And so she gives him just a little bit more so that she puts them on that path. And I think she almost kind of alludes to that when she ends up showing up there at the end. But I thought that was neat too, that some person that I had no idea was going to have any more to do with this story shows up later, and we find out that she was actually, and she couldn't approach Mari because she knew that if she'd come to her with this full-blown story that it would have seemed absurd, and she never would have
Now here's an idea. Hey,
her,
Mari, let's go for a ride on the boat.
Well, I think also I think it was very well said that Doherty really had a clamp down on that, especially, and I think a lot of people were afraid of that. Also, when Mari leaves and Catriona, she's afraid for Catriona that Doherty will go there to her, but then she says, "But her husband, will protect her," only to find out that Doherty actually kind of beat the heck out of the husband when he did go over there to find Mari. So I thought that was interesting too, that he wasn't as much of a defense for her as we thought he might be. Luckily, not so much fortunately for Larry, but luckily Larry and Charlie do show up when they do, because it might have been even worse for that guy. So anyway, great story, great conclusion. I'm very much pleased, and I gave this 5 stars on Goodreads, which I rarely do, but there was just so many boxes that I was able to tick for this deserves what it's getting from me on the reviews. So
very much so.
I would agree.
Good. Another good one. All right, let's move on to our other review, which is one that we probably should have done when we did the Lethbridge-Stewart quiz book, but neglected to do, which is
Cow Pats and Comfort. I don't have a synopsis.
Oh,
By
good.
Tim Gambrell.
All right, well,
Tim Gambrell.
this was an interesting little side story. There's not a lot to it ultimately when you get to the resolution of it, but I really liked being able to go back to Bladeau and get a little bit more insight on the Bladeau cadets. I mean, it's small. To find out about Smithy, who was one of the previous cadet people, and just the fact that Lethbridge-Stewart is called there to help this. Was it going back to help Henry with? Was it Henry? Who was it that called him back? It wasn't Ray. Must have been Henry that called him back to help with a situation that they're having, which ultimately ties into the fact that the Fifth was getting signals from this area anyway, so it kind of benefited both parties for him to go there and check this out. But I thought it was this is one of those stories I thought was going to go somewhere completely different than it went.
Yeah.
And it really surprised me, especially when somebody mentions that the teddy bear that he's holding almost looks more like a robot, and I thought, what? Why would somebody think that a teddy bear looks like a robot? But I thought they did a really good job of explaining about the material that it's made of and why it would give somebody the impression that it's a stuffed animal and somebody else an impression that it looks kind of like a robot.
Yeah.
And of course, I couldn't stop my overactive imagination from immediately leaping to every single conclusion in the Doctor Who canon. It's a Cyberman. It's a Cybermat. It's it's a mini Yeti. Oh, it's a just on and on and on and on and on.
I had sort of suspected that it was tied into the Great Intelligence in some way, some leftover remnant. Was where my mind went from it. I think the only thing that this story does, and I quite enjoyed it, but I think the only thing this story does is it made me want to know more about where did this come from, why was it left behind, because they do, it's a comfort robot basically is all it is, and what might have happened if, well, I think you get the impression that there might be some malicious intent behind it, but ultimately,
I never got that impression.
Well, I think because it wasn't so much when it was taking or not. I say it felt like it was taking over Smithy, but it was really kind of just making him think a certain way. It wasn't until Anne is affected by it that I kind of felt that maybe there's more to this than just being a comfort, for somebody that has lost something or someone. But they don't go that road once it's destroyed, once it ends up getting ripped and it's broken, then suddenly there's no repercussions after that. So the story made me want to know more about where this thing came from, but that was its only downfall, I think, for me.
What was the story where they backtrack everything to the little girl's toy that it turns out it was a gremlin or a gizmo or something, and she made it was like a wishing doll, and she'd made a very innocent thing, and so it altered like the entire course of the universe, and they had to backtrack it and go back in time and prevent her from making that. I'm not making this up. I think it was a 10th or 11th Doctor. It might have been a comic. It might have been a short. It was something that we have reviewed. Not ringing a bell?
No.
Nope.
Okay. This reminded me of that a little bit. Just that it's seemingly this huge impact. I agree with you. I thought there was maybe a little malicious intent, that it was it's either affecting him. This is what's caused him to lose his marbles, or this is what's, it's just waiting. It's just lurking before it. Oh, now it's got Lethbridge-Stewart. Now it's going to ensnare him. And it turns out, no, it's just it's a device of alien design that's, you feel bad. Here, take the teddy bear. It's going to make you feel better.
Right.
And that's it.
Yeah,
and that's very much
it.
And so I liked the fact that it had that nefarious undercurrent that really turned out not to be it.
Yeah. I like the fact that we get the flashback to young Lethbridge-Stewart, who gets alienated from the Blood Cadets during the trivia contest, but ultimately ends up helping them and giving them the answer for the last question in order to be celebrated as a hero, even though you're still not a Blood Cadet, but being celebrated for it. And then to turn that around and at the very end have them back at the pub and getting ready to take a part, all of them, even Anne and Bishop and everybody, or not Bishop. Was Bishop even there? I don't think he was even there. It was Anne and that guy that was. Well, no, Bishop was there, but they were the guy that was carrying around the detector on his back. And I like that Lethbridge-Stewart acknowledged the fact that he recognized the guy must be exhausted from carrying this around. But anyway, to come back to at the end and have that moment in there where they're getting ready to do the quiz at Harry's bar, or pub. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Bring that back around.
It's kind of a heartbreaking story with all the sorrow and the guy and Smithy trying to find comfort in this doll, and it's making him feel better because of what it is, but the fact that he's going through all this, and then the fact that it's starting to affect our main characters because of all the heartbreak they've gone through.
Yeah.
It is kind of a sad story.
It really is. It tugs at the heartstrings a bit. Oh,
Which is really impressive that it can do that in such a short amount of pages.
Yeah, it sure does. Another thing I think that leaned towards the fact that it might be something of malicious intent is that it seemed to me that it was forcing Smithy to make that robot or that big the Big Tin Man, but really was only just a statue in honor of his father. I thought, wow, okay. So it's like, I totally misread that one. It's not where I thought they were going with that. So that just was another element that keyed into that as well.
Stone Rose. That they encounter when the 10th Doctor and Rose wind up back in Roman times, and they encounter that very contemporary woman there who's the
I remember the story.
Girl. And then when they go back to the 21st century, the creature in the box is a genie, genetically engineered neural imagination.
Yeah, that's right. That was I probably
that part of the story.
I blocked that out because I thought that might.
Well, that's the part of the story I liked.
The rest of it I thought was fine. That was the part I thought.
You could have done a whole story about the genie. That to me was interesting. The rest of the Stone Rose kind of was terrible.
That now, yeah.
But that's kind of what this comfort doll reminded me of. Was just something that. Sorry, I had to find that.
Anything else about this one?
There's nothing to this story's fault, but now I can't think of this story without imagining Bebo from Legends of Tomorrow. There's in this most recent season, they wound up. There's this blue talking Furby-like doll that they've created that Vikings wind up worshiping as the god of war, and then it becomes this huge plot point in the season finale. But it literally is basically kind of it's a modern toy, but it's a comfort bot. That's
that's terrifying.
I can't help but think of this thing now because
that is terrifying.
It's kind of a bear-like creature, but a robot at the same time.
I thought of Teddy from AI.
Okay,
like that's kind of Teddy Ruxpin. Was kind of.
I just imagined a metallic-looking bear. I kept saying it was a teddy bear, and then somebody said it looked like a robot. And I said, okay, it was a metallic-looking teddy bear. All right.
I do like the fact that everybody gets to have a pub trivia thing at the end. It's kind of like this is a group that probably doesn't hang out together.
No,
much.
And probably doesn't get a lot of downtime. So.
Yeah.
I see what you did there.
Every time I say downtime, I'm not alluding.
Yes, you are.
Okay, maybe sometimes. All right, maybe a little bit. All right, Sean, what do we got coming up on the schedule?
I shouldn't have closed that, should I? Coming up on the schedule next week, we are journeying back to the 4th Doctor era with some Big Finish. We're going to tackle the reboot. It's the third series?
Third series, yes.
Third series of the Fourth Doctor Adventures. Number 1, The King of Sontar. And number 2, White Ghosts. And these are both with Leela, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So you can tune in and get our reviews on those stories.
Be excited to hear some more Fourth Doctor and Leela because we kind of stepped away from that to do some Romana for a while. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah,
very good. All right, don't forget you can hear us on Apple Podcasts, on the Google Play Music Store, on their podcast engine. We're also available on Stitcher. You can listen to us on TuneIn and Player FM. Anything else we need to touch on this week before we close this show?
Don't believe so.
I don't think so.
All right, well, if that's going to do it for this time, until next time, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Be seeing you. Thanks for listening.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.